201-3811. I did not watch the Comey interview last night, but I did look at clips today extensively because my show was on at the same time, and I hope you had an opportunity to watch it. I'm sure you would have learned a hell of a lot more. But you wouldn't even know it's on if I didn't mention it on the radio. It's sad. I'm going to try and deal with that. We'll see. All that aside, so I'm walking my dog Barney down the street, and one of my few liberal neighbors is in his car. He's an ex-lawyer, says to me, "Hey, well, look at your buddy Hannity." They're always so kind, aren't they? Never had a nasty thing to say about Hillary or Bill or any of the rest of it. I said, "What about it?" "Well, he certainly picked a great lawyer." I said, "Well, he put out a statement," and I told him what the statement said. "Oh, there's still attorney-client privilege." Folks, let me explain something. This is a sideshow. An absolute sideshow. Hannity's not involved in anything. Hannity won't be involved in anything. Do you ever go up to a lawyer and ask them some questions or call them or send them an email or something like that? You don't actually have a formal relationship, but you say, I'm in this custody battle. What do you think about this? And I have not talked at all to Hannity about the substance of this. I'm just telling you as an example. Or, I have this contract. You ever thought about that? Or whatever it is. Because Sean put out a statement, and he said, "Michael Cohen has never represented me in any matter. I never retained him, received an invoice, or paid legal fees. I've occasionally had brief discussions with him about legal questions, about which I wanted his input and perspective. I assume those conversations were confidential, but to be absolutely clear, they never involved any matter between me and a third party." So, we all do this. I even do this. But now, why didn't Sean reveal this? Because you don't have an obligation. When you're talking to somebody, and you may not even realize now if you have an attorney-client privilege or not an attorney-client privilege, you don't have an obligation to tell anybody that. If you see a urologist, you don't have an obligation to tell them that if they're a guest on your program either. So that's a sideshow. That'll be done in a day or two. And unfortunately, this is filled with sideshows. We now have center stage a porn actress and her slip-and-fall lawyer and the Southern District of New York. And this is what I want to get into a little bit. The more I look at these clips of what Comey had to say yesterday, and some clips are being put out of things he said that were not aired last night, the more something becomes very crystal clear to me. Comey's news conference in July, I think it was July 2016, where we all listened, and I listened, and he's laying out the case for indicting Hillary Clinton, and then he says, no, but she shouldn't be indicted. He rewrites the statute, and he does not allow the matter to reach the prosecutors in the office for their own independent decision. Remember all that? Now, why did he do that? He got Lanny Davis running around like a buffoon, attacking Comey for that. You have Hillary Clinton, who's written and said that that cost her election, as well as October. I'll get to that. But that's not what Comey thought. Comey thought he was protecting Hillary Clinton. Comey thought he was protecting Hillary Clinton. Because you see, ladies and gentlemen, something extraordinary took place at the Democrat National Convention. What was extraordinary, Mr. Producer? Can you think about that? Anybody know what was extraordinary? Hillary Clinton was nominated while she was under investigation. You had a presidential candidate who became the nominee who was under criminal investigation for potential violations, among other things, of the Espionage Act. Now think about it. Now think about that. Comey wants Hillary to win. Why do I know that now? Well, his wife and his daughters are marching in this thing. I'll get to that later. Clearly, he liked Hillary. And clearly, he was sad to see Obama go. I'll get to that soon, too. He despised Trump. He despised Trump even before he ever talked to him. He despised him as a candidate. I don't care if he's a Republican, Democrat, or whatever the hell he is. It doesn't matter. He did not like Trump. Neither did Stroke. Neither did McCabe. Neither did Page. Neither did any of the upper hierarchy of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But I want you to listen to me very clearly. The Democrat Party nominated a candidate who was under criminal investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation for possible violations of, among other statutes, the Espionage Act, 18 United States Code 783. When Comey did that press conference and laid out the case against Hillary Clinton, he changed the statute. We talked about this at the time. He insisted on specific intent when that wasn't the standard. Gross negligence was the standard. The gross negligence in handling classified information, not specific intent to mishandle it or to reveal it. So he changed it. Go back to the beginning. So here's the problem. The Democrat Party nominated somebody who should have been indicted. But he didn't want her indicted. So he took the decision away from department prosecutors. Forget about Loretta Lynch. He took the decision away from civil servants, line prosecutors. Yes, it would have to have been approved by the Attorney General. But what a mess he prevented if you're a Democrat. And then, having additional access to emails that the FBI at the highest level sat on, and realizing, in his view, that Hillary Clinton would be elected president, this is what he said. He went back and he looked at it a day or two before the weekend before the election, quickly looked at it, quickly exonerated her. And Hillary and Lanny Davis and her other surrogates and spokes idiots, they're out there saying, that cost me the election, that cost me the election. But again, he was protecting her. If she was elected president of the United States, he wanted her cleared. He wanted her to be protected. So twice he came to her defense. Forget about what she says and Lanny Davis and the other partisans and spin doctors. He stopped her from being charged because the Democrats nominated somebody who was under criminal investigation and should have been indicted, which would have been truly a remarkable event. But he said no. And at the same time as that was going on, the same time, the Russians were trying to interfere with our election. And over at the White House, when Susan Rice became aware of this, she directed the head of cybersecurity not to do anything, and in fact, not to provide options for the President of the United States to address it. And not until a week before the general election did Obama come out and did others come out and mention the fact that the Russians were involved in the election. Why? Again, we know why. They thought Hillary was going to win, so they didn't want anyone to think that she won because of the Russians interfering in the election. Because we all knew that the Russians really wanted her. But regardless, they wanted to disrupt the election. So you have two cover-ups. One is for Hillary specifically and her violations of the Espionage Act, led by James Comey. And the other was the Russian interference in our election, led by numerous officials in the Obama administration, but it goes all the way into the Oval Office with Susan Rice. Now we look at the Southern District of New York. Everybody says that's where the real action is now, the Southern District of New York. Forget about collusion. Forget about Mueller. The real action now is the Southern District of New York. And, coincidentally, we have another recusal. The United States Attorney appointed by the President of the United States has recused himself. So now it's left to the bureaucrats, to the civil servants, who we know we can all trust. Sure we can. That's what we've been told. We can all trust them. And what are they doing? President's not going to be indicted. I don't think he can be, but they can try. President's not going to be indicted over Russian collusion. We've talked about this till we're blue in the face. Collusion's not a crime. There's no evidence that he committed any offshoots of any types of crime. Mueller, yes, he's hooked up on this obstruction of justice that he'll throw out there. Won't charge him. He'll just throw it out there for impeachment purposes. Again, we talked about that. But that's not good enough. So he refers a matter over to the Southern District of New York. He doesn't refer the matter over to the Southern District of New York. Let me tell you something. He's coordinating with the Southern District of New York. He doesn't go to the Deputy Attorney General to expand his authority. He expands it on his own by reaching out to the Southern District of New York and saying, hey, boys, I've got a couple ideas for you over there. After all, you need to understand how incestuous this is. There are many individuals who are working for Mueller who are tight with the Southern District of New York, including the former head of the unit within the Southern District of New York's U.S. Attorney's Office of their public corruption section. He now works for Mueller. And you know damn well they've been coordinating. So what are they coordinating on? Well, look at this. We have this issue with this Stormy Daniels. That's what we've got. What does that mean? Well, we don't know. They're going to expand the whole idea of conspiracy, you see. What we know right now is Stormy Daniels signed a deal, a non-disclosure agreement, for which she received $130,000. It's called an NDA. NDAs are legal and they're commonplace. First, we heard them throw out that it could be a campaign violation, you see. A campaign violation as an in-kind contribution to help Trump by silencing her. Well, that's preposterous. We had the chairman of the Federal Election Commission on this program who said that's idiotic. Doesn't mean they won't try. But now, they wanted to silence her. No. They offered her money and she silenced herself. And then she broke her NDA. She broke her non-disclosure agreement, this Stormy Daniels. And she's running around like she's the victim. And then we have the Southern District of New York's. We don't have the details because we do not have the warrant application that was approved. It must be an extraordinarily powerful warrant application by the Southern District of New York to result in a lawyer's office, a lawyer's home, a lawyer's hotel room where his family living, all simultaneously to be searched. No subpoenas, a warrant. A surprise warrant. Crime of the century involving a porno actress. Crime of the century involving I believe an ex-Playboy bunny or something. Hush money they now call hush money. No, it's a NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. Call it hush money if you wish. Now, they could be trying to say that there was extortion involved here. That they had no choice but to sign these deals. Well, they can say all they want. But to open this up involving a president of the United States, they're not after Michael Cohen. He means nothing to them. This Sean Hannity stuff today is a distraction of the worst kind. Ignore that too. It's baloney. It has nothing to do with anything. They're after the president of the United States. They're looking. They've been looking at his finances. They've been looking at his family's finances. Found nothing. They've been looking at his associations. They've gone all over the world. They've gone to Russia. They've gone to the Middle East. All over the world. And then they circle back to a porn actress. And I guess an ex-Playboy bunny and some others. Hey, I have an idea, guys. Wow, we can't find any crap here. We're looking, we're shaking these guys down. We can't find anything. We're all over Manafort. Nothing there. We got everything in here. What can we... This guy Cohen, what about him? He's got files. Okay. We'll go into court. We'll say he's not a real lawyer. Not a real lawyer. Doesn't really run cases. He doesn't really practice. He's a bagman. Then we'll get all the documents. Then we'll go through them. Apparently for 5 hours, they ran about an hour worth of tape. Jim Comey has now targeted himself. Now, what do I mean by that? He's locked himself into positions. So depending on his relevance as a witness and depending on the context of any court case, Jim Comey will be called, perhaps by Mueller as a prosecution witness, but he might be called also as a defense witness. The man is not smart. The man is evil. You saw him, those of you who were foolish enough to watch, ramble on like a smitten teenager. And the questions, for the most part, were really quite stupid. Does he think the president should be impeached? Why do we care what he thinks about that? He's a schmo. But there was something just put out that is relevant. It's relevant legally. That they did not air yesterday. But I'm going to air for you when we return. Just a couple of minutes. And this will also help you understand why Comey stood up to protect Hillary Clinton in July, whether she understands that or not, and then came back and protected her again in late October before the election, whether she understands that or not either. Because she could have easily been indicted and should have been. We'll be right back. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I love the Vice President. He's a good man. Good man. Before I get to this Comey stuff, I want to remind you of a few things. Those of you who are younger may not know this. Those of you who are my age, 60 or so, just some recollection. Remember the Iran-Contra case? Remember what that was about? Yes, Mark, we transferred weapons. And not only that, we helped the freedom fighters in Nicaragua in violation of the Boland Amendment. Do you know the Boland Amendment was unconstitutional? It was an effort by Congress to control foreign policy, and the President of the United States didn't acknowledge it. So there was no underlying crime. And even the transfer of weapons to Iran was not a violation of any crime either. Yet it engulfed the Reagan administration for a time. They went after Secretary of State Schultz. They went after Secretary of Defense Weinberger. They went after Attorney General Edwin Meese. They went after the former CIA director who passed away, Casey. And, of course, they wanted the President of the United States. That investigation, ladies and gentlemen, went on for about 8 years under Lawrence Walsh, another Republican. But he hated Reagan. He'd been Deputy Attorney General under Dwight David Eisenhower for a period of time. And he brought in all kinds of hitmen, including this guy Jeffrey Toobin, who's now on CNN. But Toobin couldn't cut it. He was there a little while. Then he quit. Then he wrote a book to make money. And Walsh went after Toobin to stop Toobin's book. All kinds of sleazy stuff going on. Landmark Legal Foundation represented Attorney General Ed Meese. I was the lead lawyer representing him. And I was fighting it out with the independent counsel. And much of the litigation occurred under the statute in secret. In front of the three-panel so-called division, the court, which had 2 circuit judges and 1 district court judge on it, all appointed by the Chief Justice of the United States. And much of this litigation went on in a courtroom in Washington, D.C., which nobody knew about. And we were filing motions back and forth. And the viciousness of these so-called independent prosecutors in trying to destroy men who had done nothing except serve their country is what taught me a lesson about people like Mueller and the people he's hired. It got so bad that right before the election, right before the election involving the re-election of George H.W. George H.W. Bush, the prosecutor Walsh brought indictments against Caspar Weinberger. Several of those charges had already passed the statute of limitations. So in other words, they were always going to be thrown out. Some of them didn't, some of them did. But the damage had been done. The damage had been done. In the case of my client, the former Attorney General of the United States, they wanted to destroy him. One of the most honest men I've ever known. One of the most ethical men I've ever known. Never took a dime from anybody. Always told us to shoot straight. Always. But they wanted him. They even wanted to indict George Shultz, the Secretary of State. You can go back and read these reports, because I wrote our report for the Attorney General. That's part of the official report in the so-called Iran-Contra matter. It's there on public for all to read. And the tactics that were used were loathsome. For 2.5 months, I had to go into this courtroom, actually into the chamber of one of the judges, and read from the grand jury testimony. Read. Wasn't allowed to take notes. Into a handheld, at that time, handheld recorder. They were going to use grand jury information in their report, which, of course, is outrageous because you can't cross-examine anybody in a grand jury. And I moved to have it all stricken in the draft. They refused. And then I moved to have the right to take the material back with me to put up a proper defense, and they said no. Then I moved to be able to at least read it into a microphone to play it back to myself in order to prepare a proper defense. And finally they agreed. So I know what kind of sleazeball activities are going on in the shadows here. And I am very much convinced that Mr. Mueller coordinated with the Southern District of New York, and I'm very much convinced that Mr. Rosenstein did the same thing since he had to approve it. And what we have here, ladies and gentlemen, is a cabal. We have a cabal. Sort of this underworld, sort of this underworld of prosecutors and investigators who do not represent all prosecutors and investigators, but they do represent a lot in the Southern District of New York and in Mueller's operation, which he put together himself. And just like Comey, who wanted Hillary to win and took steps to try and protect her, even though she's too stupid to understand it, as are most of the people who defend her, because she should have been indicted as a candidate. But they didn't want Trump to win. And yet Trump won anyway. Now they want to take him down. Now they're going to use a porno star to try and take him down. Anything that works. Because there is no Russian collusion, except with the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democrat National Committee, which Mr. Mueller is not investigating. Apparently nobody's investigating. Not the U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C. Mr. Rosenstein doesn't see fit to ask anybody to investigate that. Now, James Comey, I am not going to bore you with endless clips about the interview last night. If you wanted to watch it, you watched it. And then tell you how smart I am analyzing those clips. But there is a clip out now that wasn't played last night. And the reason I'm going to play it is not because I think I'm so clever and can analyze it for you. I'm going to play it for you because it's going to tell you a lot that you probably may not have considered. So it's 2.5 minutes or so, and I'm not going to interrupt it. So listen carefully. I'll comment on it. We'll come full circle, and I'll explain why I've played it. Cut 22. Go.
You met with President Obama after the election.
Yeah, he held me back after one of the very last meetings I had with him after the election. And he said, but I want to just tell you something generally. I appointed you to be FBI director because of your integrity and your ability. And then he looked me in the eye and he said, nothing has happened, nothing, in the last year that has changed my view of that. And look, he wasn't telling me, I agree with what you did. He wasn't telling me you made the right decision. He was telling me, I know where it came from. I know you're not a partisan hack. I know you're trying to do the right thing. And it meant a lot to me. I mean, I had not been a political supporter of President Obama's. I came to deeply respect him and his higher loyalty to the values I care a lot about. And I almost got emotional in that moment because, again, I've been walking around like Bruce Willis in The Sixth Sense, and have the President of the United States say, I still respect you for the reasons I did originally, meant a lot to me.
That was a real, in some ways, a very raw conversation in your telling. What else did you tell him?
Yeah, I said to him, Mr. President, first of all, I said, thank you, Mr. President. It has been a nightmare. I've just tried to do the right thing. And he said, I know. And then I said, I think my wife would kill me if I didn't take this chance to thank you and to tell you how much I'm going to miss you. And also I told him that I dread the next 4 years, but in many ways I feel great pressure to stay, to try and protect the institution I lead.
What were you dreading?
Well, I had some sense of the nature and character of the new President of the United States, and I worried very much that there would be an effort to erode the independence of the FBI. And I worried, given what I had seen during the campaign, that effort to remain a part might be challenged in a Trump administration. And I was right, but that's what I worried about. President Obama asked, what's the plan for briefing that material? We had decided that Director Comey would meet with the President-elect privately after we briefed the President-elect and his team on the general findings so that he could review it in a more private, more sensitive setting with the President-elect. That
was James Clapper. How did President Obama respond to that?
He didn't say a word. President Obama has a great poker face, but he simply turned. So if I'm President Obama, he turned slightly to his left, looked at me, and went like this, and then looked back at Director Clapper. So it kind of gave me a Groucho Marx, is how I thought about it, double eyebrow raise. Didn't say a word, but communicated to me at least, and I could be misreading it because I don't know President Obama's eyebrow raises, that sort of sympathy and concern, like good luck with that.
This is really remarkable, and it's a remarkable insight. And ABC News has felt fit to put this out tonight. You can see he's almost passionate in his views of Obama. And you can also see how he's sucking up to Obama and Obama's sucking up to him. And you can see this part about how he and Obama knew that he'd have a tough time with Trump. Because Comey believed in advance that Trump would not allow independence, you see, of the FBI. And of course he was right, he says. And then the president says, well, how are you going to brief Trump? Tells him how he's going to brief Trump. He raises his eyebrows a couple times and off he goes. A couple things about this. Number one, it's abundantly evident that Comey supported Obama and opposed Trump. Now, he's the FBI director. He's not supposed to support or oppose anybody. He's the FBI director. He's supposed to do his job. He's supposed to stay out of politics. He's not supposed to have a political mindset. He's not supposed to commiserate with the outgoing president about the incoming president. What else did we learn? Number two, that Obama knew what was in that dossier. If he didn't know the specifics, he knew enough. If he didn't know the specifics, he knew enough. Fascinating, isn't it? What else did we learn from this interview? What else did we learn from this interview? James Comey was always in the tank. for the sitting administration and what he hoped would be the incoming Hillary administration. He was always in the tank. We even know more, thanks to our friends over there, Breitbart. Let me see if I can find it right here. And that is, well, here it is. Comey's wife. I wanted a woman president really badly, and I supported Hillary Clinton. During an interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, former FBI Director James Comey's wife, Patrice, confessed that she supported Hillary Clinton and was devastated when Donald Trump won. I wanted a woman president really badly, and I supported Hillary Clinton. Patrice Fowler Comey told Stephanopoulos, a lot of my friends worked for her, and I was devastated when she lost. Comey admitted that his wife and girls all took part in the Women's March in response to Donald Trump's election. You know, where they're talking about bombing the White House? My wife and girls marched in the Women's March the day after President Trump's inauguration, he said. At least my 4 daughters, probably all 5 of my kids, wanted Hillary Clinton to be first woman president. I know my amazing spouse did. Trump never had a chance with these people. Never had a chance with these people. Never. And you can be damn sure that his wife influenced him. You can be damn sure his wife influenced him, just as McCabe's wife influenced him. And so this idea, there's Comey above the fray, just the good, straight shooter. He's a Republican, and I don't even know that to be true. But, you know, he was Deputy Attorney General under George W. Bush, just trying to do his job, damn it. Look how radical his family is. Now, do you think, with a family like that, James Comey was ever going to allow the indictment trigger to be pulled on Hillary Clinton? No. He was a special pleader for Hillary Clinton in July, and again in October. In July and October. This whole Russia interference issue was manipulated by the Obama administration on the intelligence side, the White House side, and the law enforcement side, and so was this. I'll be right back.